Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's It's Learning webinar, meeting the needs of all students in a virtual world. And we are going to get started in just a couple of minutes. I see people are still trying to get logged in, so we will wait for just a minute and let them get logged in. So while we are waiting just a minute for everybody to get logged in, please note that we will have an email address at the end of the presentation. If for any reason you do not get your questions answered today, we've also put that email in the chat box, briefing@itslearning.com. So if at any time you have some questions that might come to mind after the webinar, please feel free to go ahead and email briefing@itslearning.com and we'll get those questions answered for you. So today we are going to talk about meeting the needs of all students in a virtual environment. And this is some questions that have come up quite a bit recently in the world that we have right now of remote learning. And we want to make sure that we are obviously meeting the needs of all of our students every day that we teach. But I think this remote learning environment that we have been thrust upon us recently really has us in kind of a difficult situation of trying to do just that. And so we want to make sure that even in this time that we can't be in our brick and mortar classrooms, that we can't, meet with our kiddos face to face, that we are still keeping them engaged and meeting all of their needs. And so my name is Andrea Winters, and I am a pedagogical advisor on the customer success team for It's Learning. And I am joined today by Nancy Bearden, and she will chime in as she needs to, but she is definitely here to answer your questions. Nancy is a heliophysicist, educator ambassador, New Horizons Educator Fellow, and a sixth grade science teacher in a district that utilizes It's Learning. So she also teaches kiddos of varying levels. And so she has a lot of really good ideas that she can share with us, and she'll be taking questions at the end. Speaking of questions, there is a question pane. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to add those questions there. Add those questions there in the question box, and we'll answer those questions as quickly as possible. So moving on. So let's get started. So today, this webinar is for you. If you have students that require a modified curriculum, if you have students that require an IEP or 504 accommodations, or you're teaching in a remote or virtual environment, which most of us are, and you would like to see examples of teachers who are delivering a modified curriculum and accommodations in a virtual world. By the end of this webinar, hopefully you will have a set of tools to help modify your curriculum, that you will get a better overview of how to deliver accommodations in a virtual world, gain some insights on how teachers are currently meeting students' needs virtually, and to understand how to document modifications and accommodations in a virtual world, which I know is a necessary evil sometimes. So according to Sears and King, there are 4 types of modifications that can be done for students in the classroom. 1 is an accommodation, next is an adaptation, 3 is a parallel curriculum, and 4 is an overlapping curriculum. And so today, however, we are really going to focus on the first two. So we will be talking mainly about accommodations and adaptations. So what does that look like? According to the National Center on Accessible Educational Materials, when you look at accommodation, adaptation, parallel curriculums, and overlapping curricula, there is obviously things that you do to kind of change or modify. And so we want to look at the content knowledge, the conceptual difficulty, the intended goals or the outputs that the students have of the curriculum, and then the methods of instruction. So if you take a look at this, accommodations, you're teaching the exact same content and the exact same rigor or difficulty. You are only changing the output, the way the student expresses their learning, and the methods of which you instruct. And then in an adaptation type modification, you are again teaching the same curriculum. The difficulty, however, might be slightly modified. Okay, you might not go through the deeper, more rigorous parts of the curriculum, but you are still hitting the main concepts of the curriculum. And then the goals are modified, which means that the output or the learning output that the student has is modified. Of course, the method of instruction is modified. Parallel curriculum, you still have the same curriculum, but everything else is significantly modified. And then overlapping curricula, you have very different curriculums. So that's why we're only going to focus today on accommodations and adaptations. So I really like this. I was very fortunate in my previous position to have an amazing special ed department and amazing 504 leadership. And for those of you that have been in that industry, this is probably a very familiar picture for you. But I will never forget the day that I was showed this by one of the district leadership in my previous position. It really hit home with me. And as teachers, sometimes we are so focused on trying to reach the needs of all of our students in the classroom and making sure that the majority of the students have access, that we're clearing the stairway, where actually if we would just shift our thinking and really figure out ways that all students can access our curriculum by shoveling the ramp first, then every student would be reached. And I think that really hit home with me. And so hopefully today I can give you some ideas that are actually really good for every single student. And if we shift our thinking with this and we are teaching this way to every student, then not only are we reaching the students that have those accommodations and adaptations, but we're reaching every student, because it just might be their learning style, or they just might prefer to access and engage with curriculum in these different ways. So if we think about really our mindset shift of really just reaching every student and giving every single student's voice and choice, then we will be reaching every single student. So let's focus on clearing the ramp and not just focusing on the stairs today. So hopefully I'll give you some ideas to do that. So the first thing we are going to focus on today is accommodations. And so accommodations, according to the National Center on Accessible Educational Materials, accommodation is used to mean a modification of the delivery of instruction or the method of student performance, okay, the way that the student expresses their learning, okay? It does not change the content, and it does not change the difficulty or the rigor. Okay, so we are really, in these accommodations, we're really just changing our method of delivery and the way the student expresses what they've learned. So in this particular section, those are the areas that we're going to focus on. So in a traditional classroom, that would look like the following maybe types of accommodations: extended time, oral responses, oral administration, audio representations, dictionaries or translators, and then small group instruction or those inclusion minutes. In a non-traditional environment, we can still do some of those things. So this is what we're going to focus on. So in this non-traditional virtual environment, we're going to still have extended time, oral administration. We're still going to have different ways for students to express their learning and make their thinking visible. We'll talk about some text-to-speech extensions, some web extensions, and then, of course, how do we get and document those all-important inclusion minutes? So first of all, we talk about time extensions. Right now, that's kind of easy. Most of the teachers and districts I've talked to, everybody has time extensions right now, right? We really are not putting a lot of penalties because all of our students have been thrust into this new learning environment. So, but just in case you need to continue to document that, or for the future when we are no longer in this remote learning environment, in the It's Learning system, I like to obviously put a deadline on my assignments, but leave that assignment open. So that the students can still submit after the deadline. And then when a student does that, you get that exclamation point. It says that they've submitted after deadline, but then when I'm grading the assignment, there's a box in the It's Learning all-in-one grader that is for teacher notes only. That means obviously the teacher is the only one that sees those notes. It doesn't go in the student feedback box. I just write that the student is not penalized for submitting after the deadline because extended time is allowed. Okay, so that is the way that I can document that and still allow for that. If you don't have It's Learning, most student information systems have the ability to have notes as well. And so I would put that in the note box in the student information system. And so, you know, make sure that you have it in there, not penalized for submitting late, time extension allowed. And then you have that documentation that the student received that particular accommodation. So oral administration is another really common type of accommodation. So anywhere in the It's Learning system that you have a rich text box, which we'll get to a little bit later in the presentation, I'll show you a little bit more about that. But you can actually record audio with a microphone that's already in your device. I like plugging in a headset and having the headset microphone because the audio picks up a little bit better, but it's super easy, one click. So those kiddos here that have that repeat instruction, they can play this as many times as they need to. And then of course, oral administration on checks for understanding, we have that as well. You can, again, do the oral administration for the test directions, every test question, and every single answer choice. You can all do that at oral administration within the It's Learning system. So now think about different ways that students can express their learning. A lot of times we ask for students, particularly in this remote learning environment, we ask for students to write or to type what they have learned. And so keeping in mind that when a student answers the assignment, they get this rich text box, okay? Just like the teachers do in varying forms in the It's Learning system, the students get this ability to answer that assignment as well. This can also show up in a specific type of test question to answer like open response test questions. The students can very easily click the microphone and submit that oral response where other students might need that typed documentation. They can also do video if they're feeling you know, really adventurous or they have something they want to show and explain. I love having this option for even my on-level students as well. Making them record kind of their thinking and their thought process within the assignment, and then going ahead and still uploading their typed document, right? Their assignment that they would hand into me, they would upload that document in the bottom box. So students actually have the ability to do both. They can record audio and video and then still add a file. And so if your on-level students are doing both, then maybe an accommodation for some of your students might be just to do the audio or video portion of that assignment. However, I love the fact that Microsoft Word has this dictation, and you'll see this, Google has it too in just a second. So if you still have students that need those oral responses, they can go into the Microsoft Word, and this is in both the online and the desktop versions of Microsoft Word. There's a little microphone right there. It's a dictate. The microphone comes on. They might have to, like, a pop-up might say click allow access to the microphone. And then they start talking and it types for them. Okay, so this is another way that a student can still have a written response, but have oral response and kind of double duty there. And then they can obviously turn in their written response if they need to, or their typed response. Google Docs has exactly the same thing. It's in a little different place, however. If you go to tools and then voice typing is down there at the bottom. Google also has a shortcut. Students just start talking and it records their oral response, records it in a typed manner. So this is another way that you can still reach those students that have that oral response. You might not have the ability to have access to recordings within the learning management system. Both Microsoft and Google support this as well. I love this text-to-speech web extension in Chrome. It's called Read and Write. It is free. Students can highlight what they want read. You'll notice that it highlights as it reads to them, but then it's so much more. Students can actually highlight words and things that they are they don't know, and then click the vocabulary tab and it opens a Google Doc. Now they will have to have a Google account to be able to open that Google Doc, but then it defines the word and it gives them a symbol as well. And I really think that that is very helpful for our students that have need that extra scaffolding for vocabulary, our ELL students, and even younger students that might be accessing the system. This is a really neat extension for them. The other thing that the Read and Write extension will do is it has a built-in dictionary, and it has a regular dictionary. It also has a picture dictionary, which I really love for our younger learners, our ELLs, and maybe our students that just really struggle with reading all this text and a lot of this, comprehension, this reading comprehension. They also get this directly in the Read and Write extension. So they have that available. There are other things that are in this Read and Write extension as well. There's lots of options up here for students to help students. They have a screen mask for those students that need like a dark screen, things like that. I love this extension. It's free and it works directly in Chrome with anything that they open within the Chrome web browser. Translator. So we know that we have ELL students that need accommodations as well, and they might be at home without their, dictionaries, without their little electronic translators. And so the Google Chrome extension is another extension that I love. Again, it's free, and then all they do is click translate. They can pick their tons of languages that Google has there. I mean, I didn't even count them all. There were so many, but it will translate everything that it can. So there's kind of a little asterisk here. It really depends on the website, and it really depends on the resource that's within the website. So the majority of the things will be translated, but it just depends on the website. Some things might translate and some things might not. But I really love the fact that they can jump back and forth to their original and show it in English and their home language, and that's really great for language acquisition. So those all important inclusion minutes, those teacher check-ins, those small group instructions, how are we keeping track of that and how are we doing it? There's lots of options. It's Learning has a internal conferencing system that's good for small groups, video or text chat based. We also have an integration or standalone versions of Microsoft Teams and Google Hangouts. And we have, those two have built-in meeting recording, screen sharing, closed captioning, which I really like. And then Teams also has a built-in interactive whiteboard. And so you can have those items. You can use this integrated, or you can just take the link to any video meeting conference and drop it into It's Learning, and the link is there for students to access as well. We have that. So you can do those small group lessons, but you can do that in several different ways within It's Learning. I like putting it into a task because I can assign it to specific groups or specific students. So if I know I have a small group that I need to do small group instruction with, I can go ahead and put my video conferencing link in here or do my integration, and then give it a day and a time and assign it to those specific students. And even now here, if I click show more option, I could even in a task assign a learning standard to it. So if I know that I'm going to do small group instructions on adding fractions, I can put that standard in there, and then I have not only who attended, what time, how long, but also what learning standard we talked about as well. You can do the same thing in events. So you can attach it to a particular groups or groups of students, put the links in there. The one different with events is you cannot tag that to a learning standard. So, but it does show up on the student's home screen within It's Learning. So I've heard from several teachers, we're not allowed to do video conferencing with our students. So what are my options then? I like having a registration within my course, and they can register for a phone call. They can register for an instant messaging time where I can do that conferencing chat, or most of our districts has the instant messaging turned on within the It's Learning system. So I can give them other options here. I can do email check-in. And then they can sign up for what they want, and then you can actually create course groups and It's Learning based on this, and then you can send things out to those course groups. You can send them reminders, things like that. You can download it to Excel, keep dates, times, minutes, and then you also are keeping track of those minutes and what you've talked about with those small groups. You could also do that in if you don't have access to It's Learning, you could also do that in a very easily in a Microsoft or Google form, and put those same choices in there and have kids pick a choice and still download it to Excel or Google Sheets and still keep track of who attended, dates and times and minutes. I love live Q&A sessions. So this is another option if you cannot do video conferencing with your kiddos. And so in It's Learning, if you go to add a resource, at the top part, if you add an Excel, a PowerPoint, or Word in this manner right here, this creates a collaborative document for everyone into the course, and they can type in and the teacher can immediately answer questions. In Excel, you could have a column for questions, a column for answers. PowerPoint, you could create a slide for every question. You could do blog style in words. And if you don't have access to It's Learning, you can do the exact same thing in a OneDrive or a Google Drive doc just by sharing that editable link to those documents with your students. I know some teachers like to take their actual assignment in Google Drive and share the link with only comments on for their students, and then they can't mess with or edit any of the content within the document, but they can ask questions along the side by commenting, and the teachers can answer those comments on the side of the document. So next is adaptation. So the adaptation is obviously a modification of the delivery of instruction, but also the difficulty is slightly modified. So you might be doing something different for these students. And so we have those traditional methods there, but that looks kind of different in a virtual world. We might do differentiated groups, teacher recorded lessons, audio recordings. So let's jump into that. So first, small group assignments. In It's Learning, you can have a group assignment and you can have students use course groups. As a teacher, I would create those groups and I would have kiddos do a group assignment, and then I would put those kids into groups and have them do different things based on maybe what their accommodation says or what a percentage of the assignment. Or you can have them, students create their own groups, and then you can grade those students on what they've completed within that group work. I like differentiated assignments. I know that a lot of times when I have students that have adaptations, they have a totally different, sometimes a totally different assignment. I know a lot of times they have totally different assessments, right? They have fewer questions, you take questions out, they have fewer answer choices. If it's, maybe a math concept, they're only doing, adding fractions with like denominators instead of unlike denominators, or mixed fractions or something. So you're actually going to differentiate their assignment. So what I like to do is in It's Learning, I create a folder and I title it for that group. And I put those kiddos in a group within my course. And then in permissions, I assign that folder to that group of students. And everything I drop in here only that group of students will have access to. So I make my original assignment, I make a copy of that assignment, and I drop it into this folder, and then I modify it. Okay, and then that modified assignment is only viewable for those students that are in that group that I have signed those permissions to, and then they know that those assignments are for them. Now, I know a lot of teachers, they say, but I like to do my lessons in Pages. And here in Pages, you can see, here's an example of a teacher that has a lesson. This is Nancy's lesson. And she actually has a different box for those kiddos to access their differentiated support in. So the students know, and that's really great because we talked a lot about every student might need differentiated support or might need a different assignment or might want a practice assignment. And so she drops everything here for everybody to see. And then there's differentiation there, and then everybody can see it and have access to it. So that's a really great idea. So don't forget, teacher recorded. Remember, we talked about students accessing recording and video. Teachers can do the same thing. So you might need to chunk your lesson, and you might want to record it with an example or with a scaffold or those audio. Anywhere you see the rich text editor in It's Learning, you can do that. Assignments, plans, discussion boards, tests, notes, pages, tasks, they're everywhere. So you might want to record a chunked version of the lesson and have that available for those kiddos that might have a modified assignment. And if you don't have It's Learning, PowerPoint is amazing. I would do the same lesson. I would put it on a PowerPoint. And then if you go to slideshow and you click record slideshow, you get a window that looks like this. And then whatever that lesson is, you can record yourself, or you can turn the camera off. It doesn't have to. You can just have audio. You can annotate, you can chunk those, you can still create that video, even if you don't have access to a learning management system that, or a third-party screencasting software. Microsoft PowerPoint will let you record, and then you can annotate over the top of that, and it will record everything. And then you can take that file, either upload it into your It's Learning course, email it to your students, or put it into wherever your students are accessing your information. And so you still have that video and audio recording of those lessons for your students. Okay, that was a lot. And we went really fast because I noticed that we were running out of time. So here is some resources. We will package up these resources. You will have access to all of these links, but I do want to go ahead and turn on Nancy's microphone so she has the ability to answer some questions. And do we have any questions? I'm sure we do. So
hello, everybody.
Thanks for joining us, Nancy.
Sure thing, not a problem at all.
So my team, do we have any questions? Let me see.
Well, while you're looking, I just do want to tell everybody, one of the things that I really appreciate with It's Learning, because we use it a lot, one of the things that I really appreciate It's Learning is how I can differentiate with my SPED, my 504, and my ELL students. We are able to put differentiating tabs down. We are also able to get the students to work with a different or alternative assignment. And one of the things that I truly am very passionate about is translating, being able for the students to translate to their home language, answer things, and then answer questions, do some of the worksheet information, and then they can do that in their home language, and then they send it to me and they translate it back to English. And to me, that's just really cool. I may not completely understand how they do that because they're way smarter than me, but I think it's just a really neat thing for them to be able to do.
Awesome. Thank you, Nancy. We do have a couple of questions. Let's see. One question is It's Learning similar to Zoom? Not really. Zoom is just video conferencing. It's Learning is actually a virtual classroom. It's a virtual learning environment. So it does so much more than that. But if you would like some more information, please go ahead and email briefing@itslearning.com and we will get you some more information. I know there are a lot of questions about, will we have access to the webinar? Will we have a certificate? Absolutely. You will get all of this information when the email goes out tomorrow. Can the teacher and student use the read aloud functions while working on assignments? Yes, it is a Chrome web browser extension. It works on anything that is in the Chrome web browser. So I absolutely love that. It is one of my favorite tools to use. What grade level is It's Learning appropriate for? Nancy, you're a 6th grade teacher, but what else do you know about grade level for It's Learning? What have you seen?
I may teach 6th grade right now, but I've taught 6th grade up through, all middle school. It's appropriate for completely appropriate for middle school. I would even say that it's, you can certainly use it with your elementary campuses. There's so much available and there's so many resources. So I would definitely use that with elementary as well.
Absolutely. We have lots of districts that utilize this all the way down to kindergarten. And we have one of my wonderful team members, Scott Gaglione, he did a webinar on exactly that, utilizing It's Learning in the primary classroom. And that webinar is in our website that we will send out in this email as well, where you can access our current webinars, register for those, and you can access any of our previous webinars. So take a look at Scott's webinar on utilizing It's Learning with primary students. All right, I know we are a few minutes over time, but I want to make sure that I have all of the questions answered. So let me just scroll through here real quick.
So, Andrea, there's a couple of questions, and these may want to be put into briefing@itslearning.com. A couple questions about the costs of It's Learning, if there's a trial version. So those folks may want to put those questions in briefing@itslearning.com, and we can get back to them.
Yes, thank you very much. That is a good point. So all of those questions that those of you that are curious about the It's Learning platform, please email briefing@itslearning.com and we'll be happy to follow up with you. So one of the teachers I saw said that they are not allowed to use video conferencing with their students. So remember, I loved the live Q&A sessions with the with either the Microsoft document or the Google Doc, where you send the link out to the students and y'all are all typing in the document all at the same time. So I like that for checking in with your students as well. If you can't do video conferencing, that is a really good option. Let's see.
Andrea, there was a question about Nancy's full name, title, expertise, school. Is that on the opening slide? I thought I saw it, but I'm not
sure is. See if we can go back here. The easiest way to go back and show you. I will. Yes.
There's lots of questions. I'm trying to make sure.
I know there's lots of questions. So here, let's go back to the opening slide. There we go. Whoops. There we go. There's Nancy's name and her title.
Oh.
And that will be a part of the webinar recording. So
absolutely. This question, can a teacher see if the student used the read aloud function while working on assignments? You cannot see that. So you would not be able to document the fact that they actually used the read aloud function. That would just be something that you would need to make sure the student was aware of. There's other ways that you could, document that by, asking the kiddo to do a screen recording or something like that. But so that those two don't integrate together. It's just a supplementary tool. The next question, does It's Learning work like Google Classroom? Yes, only it has a lot more features that you might not see in Google Classroom, such as standards alignment, some standards of progress reporting, lots of reporting, lots of data, lots of different abilities for your students. things for them to do.
And Andrea, I'm not sure you caught this question. Will the webinar be in PowerSchool for PD credit? And I'm not sure what district that might be from, but lots of districts are allowing folks to take the certificate that will come, with this webinar and be able to upload it into their systems for PD credit. So once you get that certificate, you may want to see if that will work, as well as you'll have the recording of the webinar.
All right, Nancy, any last words of wisdom?
Guys, I know it's a scary world. I do. I'm an older teacher. I'm 60, so technology is very daunting for me. But I have found that this has really, the way that we're now doing things has really been educational for me, because my students are teaching me a lot. And I truly appreciate that from them. It keeps the neurons popping. So please do everything that you can, and don't be at all concerned that your children are not going to figure it out, because the kids are going to figure it out. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Nancy. I appreciate that. Yes, Nancy and I go way back in our educational careers, and she is one of my favorite people, and I love her enthusiasm, and the kiddos love her as well, because she is she doesn't seem scared to try things, but I know that deep down inside she might be a little nervous, but she always does really great with the kiddos, and they love her. So I really appreciate Nancy joining us today.
Well, thank you.
Any last minute questions? Because I know that we are a few minutes over. Yeah, so the web address for the free American short stories will be in the email that you receive tomorrow after the webinar, but I will show you very quickly. If I can just get down to the resources again real quick. I love this website. It is AmericanLiterature.com short stories for children, but that AmericanLiterature.com are the free online books. And there's a, if you click at the top, there actually on the toolbar is a whole section for children's books. There's a section for poetry. It's a lot of neat stuff. I really, really love that site. So we do have a question. Is there a way to pull a report for teacher notes so that the teacher has all the notes for one student in place? Of course, that is the amazing Miss Julie Jedlicka that always has amazing questions. Julie, let me get back to you on that one. Rachel and I will try to figure out the answer. I don't know that offhand unless Rachel, you know if there's a way to pull all of the teacher notes for one student.
I don't off the top of my head, but we'll find out.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you, Julie, for that question. That was a great question. We will try to get you the answer to that question. All right, so we are 10 minutes over time, and I apologize. I know that was a lot of information in a short amount of time, but you will be receiving all of this information and a link to the webinar in an email tomorrow, about 24 hours it takes to get out. So be looking for that. If there's any questions that you have that I did not get to, or anything that comes to mind afterwards, please don't hesitate to email briefing@itslearning.com, and we will get back to you as quickly as possible. Thank you everyone so much for joining. I really appreciate it. I hope everybody stays safe, stays well, and we'll see you soon.